There is nothing that beats going to a theme park with your loved ones. It's a great way to kick back, have some fun, and build some pleasant memories. When going to a park, most people do some small things to get ready, like buy tickets, put on sunscreen, and plan for snacks and bathroom breaks. Sadly, nothing could have fully prepared the Ferguson family for the horror that was about to befall them, as their son, Leeshaw Ferguson, who was 17 years old at the time, was gruesomely decapitated by one of the park rides. Perhaps if he hadn't snuck into the restricted area of the carnival that day, he would be alive today. But the question is, how did it really happen? And how did he even get into the restricted section in the first place? This is the tragic tale of Leeshaw, who lost his life in a horrible carnival accident. For many, a visit to the amusement park is the best way to relax and enjoy some much appreciated family time. But for 17-year-old Leeshaw Ferguson and his family, the park would forever be a place of horror, as what was meant to be a family-friendly Batman ride changed their family forever. The Batman ride, made by Bollinger and Mabillard, was the first inverted roller coaster ever built. It got its name because, unlike other roller coasters at the time, the rider did not sit on the tracks and zoom around, but rather, it hung from the tracks and dangled the passengers over the park below them. This ride was all the rage during its initial launch in the early 2000s, as not only did it dangle people from the tracks, it also ran in loops and hills at a top speed of about 80 kilometers per hour, creating a feeling of weightlessness like no other ride did during its time. And with about 820 meters of solid steel tracks, the ride was definitely something to behold. People enjoyed the journey, not just because it provided a simulation of what it would be like to be in space, but also because it was actually rather safe. Or so everyone thought. The roller coaster had a harness that went over the riders' shoulders and held them securely in place while at the same time permitting their legs to hang over the park below them. So, the ride was actually quite safe for the passengers, but for the people beneath it, well, that was quite a different story. The attraction was first put up at Six Flags Over Illinois. However, because it was so popular, the park's management asked for 6 more identical copies to be made and installed at their other parks. Among these other parks was the Six Flags Over Georgia, which is where our story begins. Only 10 years after its initial 1997 release, in the summer of 2008, a terrible event occurred. On June 28, 2008, 17-year-old Leeshaw Ferguson was in the park with his family as part of a church-sponsored group trip. He had no idea that his end was slowly creeping near. Leeshaw, along with 67 other church members who lived in Georgia, had come to visit the park and enjoy some rides. They were all looking forward to enjoying the thrills, and thrills they got. According to his dad and many church members, Leeshaw was a proper comedian, always looking for ways to make people laugh and always helping out in the church. His overall personality and willingness to lift everyone's spirit were what caused the events of the day to shake the foundations of all who knew him. You see, on that particular day, Leeshaw and one of his other friends had navigated their way into a restricted area located directly below the Batman ride. To this day, no one really knows the reasons behind his visit. However, many eyewitnesses argued that his real motive was to retrieve a hat that he had lost while on the ride. Others, on the other hand, were of the opinion that the young boy intended to touch the ride itself and the legs of those who were on it. A number of other people who were present, in addition to some police officers, believed that Leeshaw and the other boy were merely attempting to beat the line by taking a shortcut to the entrance of the ride. But regardless of the reasons, what people know for a fact is that Leeshaw left for the area alive and returned in a body bag. See, in order to enter the restricted area, Leeshaw and the other boy had to climb over not 1 but 2 fences that were each 6 feet high and covered in warning signs emphasizing its restriction. Ignoring the signs and scaling the wall, the boys headed for an area that was just below a drop. This is where tragedy struck, as a train traveling at the ride's full speed of 80 kilometers per hour connected with the boy's head, snapped it clean off, and sent it rolling. To be more specific, it wasn't the ride that hit the boy, but rather the foot of one of the riders. The impact of the rider's foot striking Ferguson in the head occurred at such a high speed that the force of the collision severed the boy's head from his body, causing instant death. As a result of this accident, there was widespread fear throughout the park, and as a result, the park administration made the decision to formally shut down the ride and call for emergency services. When emergency services arrived, Ferguson was declared dead on impact. The other boy, however, was completely unharmed, and by some stroke of genuine luck, the rider whose foot had collided with Ferguson's head was unharmed as well. Following this tragic accident, the park was closed, and the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration began to investigate the ride to see if it was safe for passengers after all. During this time, Ferguson's autopsy report came in, and his death was labeled an accident. His death and the then ongoing investigation quickly made national news, with outlets such as NBC and CBS covering the story, and people were shocked to learn that Ferguson was not the first person to die in this exact same way. In May of 2002, a man named Samuel Milton Geisen, who was 58 years old, was likewise murdered by the Batman in the same manner as Leeshaw. Nobody knows for certain what the elderly groundskeeper was doing at the location at the time of his demise, because he worked there at the time. Unfortunately, the elderly man suffered the same fate as Ferguson when he was struck by the foot of one of the ride passengers and died on the spot. The Cobb County Police spokesman, Sergeant Dana Pierce, who later spoke about the incident, said that there were adequate signs covering the place and detailing the risks of going there. He said, "It would be hard to imagine how somebody could not read those signs and yet traverse both those fences." Following his death, several videos of the incident went viral on several social media platforms, but were ultimately taken down for their graphic nature. And although we might never know why he ventured to that area, we know for a fact that his death hurt his family deeply and the community at large, with his dad, Asia Ferguson, saying, "We still don't know what happened. He was my oldest son. He was named after me. It's tragic." The death of 17-year-old Asia Leeshaw Ferguson and 58-year-old Samuel Milton Guyton shocked the community and scared the people as they were killed by the same exact mechanism and in the same area. And even though the two sadly passed on more than 10 years ago, the fear continues to echo today as the park has yet to change the mechanism that took their lives. Following their deaths, the rides were shut down for the exact amount of time necessary for the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration to conduct an investigation of the rides and determine whether or not it was safe for customers to ride them. The ride is still operational today, with many of its riders not knowing about the tragedy that occurred beneath it, and those who do avoiding it in general. But what do you think? Why were the two drawn to that spot? Should the park be held accountable for the tragedy? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Until next time.